Welcome to my vlog. This is my very first vlog. My name is Bryan, and I'm sure by looking over my shoulder, you may have an idea of what it's about. That's definitely a partial idea. This was me a year ago, January 2024, where I was roughly at that point probably 238, but I ended up peaking out at 243 in mid-March. And then this is me now, where I'm sitting at about 195 pounds as today, as low as 192. So the reason I'm doing this blog is I want to document my journey, my next phase of my journey. And before I describe what that is, I think I should back up just a little bit in terms of a journey I was on, or many journeys I've been on, and what's led up to this journey. So very quick background on myself is I've been one of those people my entire life that goes up 50 pounds, down 50 pounds, up 50 pounds, down 50 pounds. If I've done it once, I've done it at least a dozen times, and it seems to be a trend where I was looking at it. I think it was every odd year I would go up and every even year I'd go down. At least that's how it had been over the last 6, 7 years. So back when I was younger, I believe I was about 1986, to help me lose weight, I did my first ever triathlon. And I think triathlons, the Ironman had only been around 8 or 10 years at that point. And I did a half Ironman. Then the following year, I did an Ironman, and then I did two more. In one of them was in Hawaii. I did Kona way back when. Got in on a lottery, and it was great because I got married that year, and we made it our honeymoon period as well. So anyway, after I had done those Ironman, I continued on, and then I got a little burnt out. And then, being a young person, I started my career, started my family, and a 16-year period went on where I went up and down, up and down, up and down. And then I believe it was around 2007, 2008, I was sitting again, well over 50 pounds heavier. At that time, I was 212 pounds, and I decided that I was going to get back into shape. And someone had, I had been talking, for those who are older, who maybe grew up on the playgrounds in the 70s, they remember Al Bundy. And I think for 16 years there, I was a bit of an Al Bundy, talking about the Ironmans that I had done. And I had a person that I worked with made a comment, just a side comment about, I had mentioned we were having a few drinks, and I had mentioned I could still do an Ironman, and they laughed at me. And just that little trigger, as strange as it sounds, got me motivated enough that I decided to lose the weight, which I did, and then get back into shape, which I did. This time, though, I became very serious at training, and in fact qualified for Kona. There was a 3-year, 4-year period where I was a maniac in terms of training, anywhere from 15 to 20 hours a week, and countless 100-mile century bike rides and 3-hour runs, etc. And where the journey began for me was when I started the journey, I decided that I wanted to do blogging. And I was going to blog my journey, A, to keep me accountable, and B, I thought it would be a great thing that if I had grandchildren, they could read about what Grandpa did and his comeback. And I thought about it because I had idolized one of my grandparents and thought, geez, it would have been great if I could read about his history, if he had documented it. So that's what I did. And the blog actually grew, created its own sense of community, which was quite interesting because I never started it in order to grow any community, etc. I just started it to document my journey. And in fact, the community, I wouldn't say it was huge. I believe I probably had 400, if it might have been 200 to 400 really strong subscribers, and but many of them became friends. And when they come to my city, they actually stayed in my home, and I met them all through social media. And I went training in San Francisco, and someone offered for me to stay at their home that I didn't know. And I could go into all the stories, but needless to say, I blogged for over 1,000 days, did my whole journey, and it kind of the top point was when I finally qualified for Kona, and I made it to Kona. I think I was 45 years old, somewhere in there. Don't quote me, plus or minus. I'm not good with dates and math anymore without a calculator. For those of you who are in my era, I turned 60 years old this year. So I want to talk about this vlog. I'm not blogging, but I've decided to vlog, and it's taken me a long time to think about it, whether or not I wanted to do it, for a variety of reasons. I got a lot going on in my career life. I'm 60 years old now, and for those who are older, you start realizing your motivations are a little bit less, and I know the amount of work that it takes to do something daily or weekly or keep things going. And I did that with the vlog, and it definitely cuts into family time and things like that. And of course, as you get older, you're not as ambitious or have the same level of energy. Or at least that's what I'm telling myself right now. So the reason I started this, to kind of go through, as you saw from that picture, there was a point that was in January. I was in Los Angeles. We had rented a place in LA for 3 months. I live up in the Toronto area. And for the very first time in our life, we decided, let's try to get away for part of the winter for 3 months and see what it's like, because we've never done that before. So we rented a place, an Airbnb in Los Angeles. We actually drove there, which I didn't realize that it was going to be a 5-day drive. I brought my bike. I was sitting, as I mentioned back then, I was at least 238. I figured this is going to be great. It's going to be warm. I'm going to, go after losing another 50 pounds again, and I'm going to get into great shape and all the rest of that stuff. And so went there, didn't turn out to be exactly what I thought it would be. When I got to Los Angeles, I looked at the roads, and didn't look like they were conducive to cycle. We were kind of in the foothills of the Hollywood Hills, so there was Mulholland Drive, and to get up there was a lot of climbing, and I wasn't in the greatest of shape, and then I was paranoid about cars. And so I believe I took the bike out in a 3-month period, which I bought the bike just to get back into shape. So I bought myself a Canyon, which I since sold. That's a whole different story. But I think I used the bike 3 or 4 times, and the 2 of the times were in Griffith Park, and I think the third was doing Mulholland Drive. So fast forward to the end of the trip. It was, I think, around mid-March, March 13th it was March 13th is when I had the epiphany, and I think I started on March 16th. I got to a point where I hit 243 pounds. That's a record for me. Normally I'd be freaking out whenever I hit 220, but I hit 243. And what the challenge was for me was that I knew that if I didn't do something, that I was going to go to 300. That I was at that point where it was like, F it, I'm going to go for broke. I was drinking way too much, eating way too much, and just not taking care of myself. My health was not good, and I just knew it hit that point where if I don't do something, I'm going to hit 300, and I'm definitely, not going to be long for this world. And I was at a point where I was almost, who cares what happens? Whatever, And something just said to me, if you don't do something now, it's going to be the point to no return. So someone had mentioned to me about GLP-1s some time prior, and anytime I heard about, things like Ozempic, which were the main one, and I've come to learn about Mounjaro, which is what I am taking now. I used to think of it when they were bringing it up as, potentially unsafe, unnatural, cheating to a certain degree. As a bodybuilder would cheat on steroids. You would see what they called that Ozempic face that the Hollywood stars would have, and it just had a negative connotation to me. However, I got to this point where it was the point to no return, and don't get me wrong, during that time I tried to eat a little bit better, etc. It just wasn't happening. So I decided, at the 2 weeks before the end of the trip, we were leaving the end of March. I decided I was going to get some Ozempic. Or not Ozempic, I was going to do Mounjaro. I had looked at some YouTube videos, one guy in particular out of the UK, an Ironman triathlete, kind of a similar situation to me, an up and down yo-yo sort of eater and dieter. And he went on it, and it seemed to be, a better choice, or the choice that felt most natural to me to take. So I'm Canadian. So you're in the US, and to get a prescription, I came to realize that I could do it online. So, I signed up, show my health card. I had to take a picture of myself with my shirt off and some verification to show that I'm overweight, and I get this prescription. And then I take the prescription down to CVS, maybe a little naive, and the bill came out to, for a 4-week supply, they wanted $1,200 US. So for those of us in Canada, it's, $1,500-$1,600. And my wife was saying, why don't you just wait until you get back to Toronto, and it'll be a lot cheaper. Canadian healthcare or pharmaceutical pricing is a lot cheaper. As a matter of fact, to put it in perspective, the price of Mounjaro at $1,200 US or $1,500-$1,600 Canadian, I'm paying for the same $480 Canadian, which would be more about $300 US. So think $300 US versus $1,200 US. It's a big spread. And I could save that money. All I needed to do was wait 2 weeks. But it was so bad mentally that I had to do something that moment, that I decided I'm paying the $1,200. I don't care. It's that important. And 2 weeks before, I got myself on Mounjaro, and the effects were almost immediate in that it curtailed my eating. What it did, though, more I think that I was really surprised by, was it curtailed or virtually eliminated my drinking almost overnight. And, we were living the LA lifestyle. I was working from, I could work remotely. So I was working in LA on Eastern time zone. So that meant my day would start at 9 o'clock Eastern, which would be 6 a.m. in California. My day would end at 5 o'clock Eastern, which would be 2 o'clock in California. So from 2 o'clock on, we would go out, have drinks, et cetera, et cetera. So almost every day we were having drinks. In the weekend, it's kind of like you're on vacation for 3 months. And so there was a lot of drinking. So the minute that I got onto Mounjaro, almost immediately, I had no desire to drink. And for those that have done any research on these GLP-1s, and again, I can't speak about Ozempic, but I can about Mounjaro, there's a lot of people who have been over drinkers, maybe even alcoholics, people that are gamblers, people that are smoking. They've all of a sudden lost the urge to do that. And I could definitely tell you that I did. As a matter of fact, I think I went 6 months or more since that March 13th without having a drink. And the fact that I even had a drink before or after 6 months was more, I just wanted to see if what it was like. And now if I go in somewhere and I have a drink, it's usually, one drink, maybe sip a beer and leave a portion in the bottom of the glass, which is completely unusual for me. Anyway, in that period from the March 13th in there until now, which is December 29th, I'm at 195 pounds as of today. I've been down to 192, but then I started working out. So I did hit 50 pounds. I did hit that, and then I've pulled it back. So whatever the math is, and without a calculator, I can't figure it out, but it's going to be in that, 45 to 48 is where I'm bouncing around. And so, and those 45 to 48, I lost that 2-3 months ago. So I've been kind of maintaining where I am now. And I could go into a lot of things that I've been doing with Mounjaro, because there is certain things like microdosing and ways that you can do it that are not on label, which is not something I want to get into because I'm not a doctor. I don't recommend what I'm doing to anyone, although obviously I think it's a great way to go and it's been successful for me, but that's not the purpose of the vlog, other than for you to know that I never see myself getting off of Mounjaro, even with hitting the ideal weight. There's just so many benefits that I feel, and I've talked to my doctor about it, and he's had patients that have said the same thing. There's just, mental clarity. There's, what is it? There's a lot of, anyway, there's the one word I'm trying to think of, but I can't, it escapes me. Anyway, so why am I here? What's this vlog about? What's the purpose of it? So in this journey with Mounjaro, I've been working out, trying to get into shape. And over the summer, I would do bike rides and I would do runs, and I would bonk in no time. And usually about an hour, I would start bonking. And for those that don't know what bonking is, it's basically when you're completely out of energy, and you'll hear it in endurance events, or if you're doing, when you do an Ironman or you do 100-mile bike rides, and if you don't have proper nutrition, your body will bonk, and you're basically out of it and you're out of energy. And I'm sure there's, a doctor could explain all the physical things, but you basically have no energy in your body, and when you get home, you just want to sleep, and it's an absolute horrible feeling. And so I would go on these, it would be almost to the hour, I would go on these rides and runs. I wouldn't even go as long. I would do half an hour, but I'd be going at higher energy, and I would start bonking. And so here I was, have lost the majority of the weight. My racing weight was about 185. So at 195, I'm only 10 pounds heavier than what I did in my racing days. And it was very common that I was 190 when I raced. So I'm a heavier racer, or triathlete to begin with. And so now I'm at the point where I guess about 2 or 3 months ago, I decided, I really want to try to get back into shape. And people like ChatGPT and Claude and Grok and all of the different AI, I spend tons of time talking to them about, the issues that I'm having, and kind of came down to, I intuitively knew, I think it has something to do with the Mounjaro, and having to do where, your stomach is emptying slower, you're not working on the carbs like you normally would. You're running out of glycogen pretty quick. It's not replacing, again, a doctor could get into all that stuff. I'm just keeping it at a very high level. And and I decided, I started reducing the dosage, playing with all kinds of stuff, which I'm still doing now. And the big thing for me is, okay, how do I get back into some good endurance shape? I'm not saying that I want to do an Ironman, but I want to be in the type of shape where, if I decide I want to do a century ride, I could do a century ride. Or on a weekend, if I want to go out and do a 2.5, 3 hour ride, that I can go out and do a 2.5, 3 hour ride without coming back and bonking. Or if I want to go out for a run and do an hour and a half, 2 hour run, or if I want to do a half marathon, I could do that without bonking. So that's the first phase. The second thing is I see myself at one point, I was in pretty top shape. When you qualify for Kona in your mid 40s and you do it in Lake Placid, which is, I think there was over 300 or so people in my age group, and I think I was in the top 8 or whatnot, because it's not like a time and you qualify. You have to be in a spot, X amount of spots based on how large your age group is. So arguably it was one of the toughest races to qualify for Kona, and I was able to do that. So I am still on Strava, and I would, as I was trying to get going, I'm walking, but all of these guys that I had met through sense of community with my vlog, I look at their times and I was as fast as them or faster, and they're still doing exceptionally well. Some of them are doing faster now and at 60 than they were at 45 when we were racing together. So to me, it was like, wow, these guys, it just can't be age that's doing it. These guys that I raced with are doing really well at 60. And here I am. I go out for a 1 hour bike ride and I'm bonking, or a short run, and my heart rate is through the roof. And quite frankly, I was many times just sitting here and saying, is it even possible to get back into that type of shape? Am I on that back nine of life? So that's, that's where I'm at right now. So I've lost the weight. The purpose of this vlog is to document my journey from 60 years old to getting back into decent shape. And it's to help keep me motivated. And also I want to document it to show ideally that it can be done. And in a way, it's not even a matter to show that it can be done. But what's that journey going to look like to have it get done? And everyone's telling me, and when I say everyone, I mean the AIs, are telling me it's possible, but I have to do what got me there in the beginning, which is low heart rate training. Some people call it zone 2. I always called it, Phil Maffetone. I had a coach, Mark Allen, who's a well-known, famous Hall of Fame triathlete, and he was coaching me for a few years. And everything that he talked about was low heart rate training. And I did that, faithfully. As a matter of fact, when I did Lake Placid and I did the Ironman at the end, I finished the Ironman, I believe it was about 3:35, 3 hours, 35 minutes. And my heart rate the entire time did not exceed 135 beats a minute. That's how efficient I was in terms of training at low heart rate and being able to race at a lower heart rate. So now the way Maffetone's formula works is basically 180 less your age. So that puts my heart rate at 120, which the theory is as you're building the base, do not exceed 120. Well, needless to say, I've been back at it now for a couple of months, and my heart rate, it is so hard to keep it at 120 without, majority walking. And so the running for sure, unless I've done some on a treadmill now. But the pace, it's funny that I do it. For the first time, I went and did a treadmill at LA Fitness, and there was a guy beside me, and he was walking, and I think he was at like 3.7 miles per hour, and so was I. I was jogging, but I would look stride for stride. His walking speed was as fast as my running speed, although that was the only way I was able to keep my heart rate low enough. So the purpose of this is I'm essentially, trying to get back into shape, and this is going to be about the journey of me getting into shape. I recently bought a new bike, an enduro bike for no reason. It's bike number 7 that I have, although I have one that's an electric bike, which I don't really think counts. And I think I've got 30 kilometers on it. My wife and I bought electric bikes. She uses hers. She's diabetic, which makes sense in case her blood sugar gets low. She can get her way back. And so for me, though, it's a little bit of an embarrassment, but a little bit showing where my mindset was, that here's this ex-Ironman triathlete that's, cool with an electric bike. Not to say there's anything wrong with that, and I'm not criticizing anybody that has one. But for me, excuse me. So, yeah, so here's the journey. And I'll go through everything, I'll show the new bike, I'll show some of the things. Right now I'm caught on Facebook Marketplace buying, I came across it. I'm not on Facebook. I quit Facebook a number of years ago, but I came across and found Facebook Marketplace, and now I'm addicted to it, and I'm driving all over this city to that city to you name it, and to pick up some were $20 or a jersey were $20 or, anyway, I'm sure for those that have been on Facebook Marketplace that are addicted to it like me, you'll know where I'm coming from. So here's my journey. My original blog was called Training Pain. In fact, I ended up turning it into books. So every year I would take all the blog posts, use blurb, and I'd put it into books. I have, each year was one 400-page book. The last year was 2 books because there was more in it with Kona. So I think I haven't yet got a name for this one, whether it's not going to be Training Pain, but, like anything, sometimes it'll just come to you. You're on a run or a bike ride or whatever. But for right now, the vlog is I guess nameless. I have some ideas, but we will go from there. So yeah, let's watch the journey, and if this creates a sense of community like my blog did, and I get to meet some cool people, that would be great.